If we have to have a choice between being dead and pitied and being alive with a bad image, we'd rather be alive and have the bad image. One cannot and must not try to erase the past merely because it does not fit the present. Whether women are better than men, I cannot say, but I can say they are certainly no worse. The world hates a Jew who hits back. The world loves us only when we are to be pitied. We can forgive the Arabs for killing our children. We cannot forgive them for forcing us to kill their children. We will only have peace with the Arabs when they love their children more than they hate us. There will be peace in the Middle East only when the Arabs love their children more than they hate Israel. There is no such thing as a Palestinian. Pessimism is a luxury that a Jew can never allow himself. My dear, old age is like an airplane flying in a storm. Once you're in it, there's nothing you can do. You can't stop a plane. You can't stop a storm. You can't stop time. So you might as well take it easy with wisdom. Let me tell you something that we Israelis have against Moses. He took us 40 years through the desert in order to bring us to the one spot in the Middle East that has no oil. You can't improve on saying nothing. It isn't enough to believe in something. You have to have the stamina to meet obstacles and overcome them, to struggle. We Jews have a secret weapon in our struggle with the Arabs. We have no place to go. The only way to eliminate war is to love our children more than we hate our enemies. You'll never find a better sparring partner than adversity. Those that perished in Hitler's gas chambers were the last Jews to die without standing up to defend themselves. The dog that trots about finds a bone. Arab sovereignty in Jerusalem just cannot be. This city will not be divided, not half and half, not 60-40, not 75-25, nothing. By the way, did you ever realize that if Moses would have turned right instead of left, we'd have had the oil? The Arabs would have had the sand. Moses dragged us through the desert to the one place in the Middle East where there is no oil. Ability hits the mark, where presumption overshoots and diffidence falls short. The Egyptians could run to Egypt, the Syrians into Syria. The only place we could run was into the sea, and before we did that we might as well fight. Every civilization finds it necessary to negotiate compromises with its own values. Make the most of yourself by fanning the tiny inner sparks of possibility into flames of achievement. The only alternative to war is peace, and the only road to peace is negotiations. Not being beautiful was the true blessing. Not being beautiful forced me to develop my inner resources. The pretty girl has a handicap to overcome. We don't thrive on military acts. We do them because we have to, and thank God we are efficient. I can honestly say that I was never affected by the question of the success of an undertaking. If I felt it was the right thing to do, I was for it regardless of the possible outcome. Zionism and pessimism are not compatible. A leader who doesn't hesitate before he sends his nation into battle is not fit to be a leader. We do not rejoice in victories. We rejoice when a new kind of cotton is grown and when strawberries bloom. In Israel, I don't know why you use a fancy French word like détente when there's a good English phrase for it. Cold War. It is always much easier, I have discovered, to make people cry or gasp than to make them think. We only want that which is given naturally to all peoples of the world, to be masters of our own fate, not of others, and in cooperation and friendship with others. I'm sure that someday children in schools will study the history of the men who made war as you study an absurdity. They'll be shocked, just as today we're shocked with cannibalism. At work, you think of the children you have left at home. At home, you think of the work you've left unfinished. Such a struggle is unleashed within yourself. Your heart is rent. We don't want wars even when we win. You can get used to anything if you have to, even feeling perpetually guilty. There is only one thing I hope to see before I die, and that is that my people should not need expressions of sympathy anymore. I never did anything alone. Whatever was accomplished in this country was accomplished collectively. Israel itself is the strongest guarantee against another Holocaust. This country exists as the fulfillment of a promise made by God Himself. It would be ridiculous to ask it to account for its legitimacy. I want to say to you, friends, that the Jewish community in Palestine is going to fight to the very end. If we have arms to fight with, we will fight with those, and if not, we will fight with stones in our hands. Women's liberation is just a lot of foolishness. It's men who are discriminated against. They can't bear children, and no one is likely to do anything about that. It is true, we have won all our wars, but we have paid for them. We don't want victories anymore. How can we return the occupied territories? There is nobody to return them to. Show me a sensible person who likes himself or herself. I know myself too well to like what I see. I know but too well that I'm not what I'd like to be. Above all, this country is our own. Nobody has to get up in the morning and worry what his neighbors think of him. Being a Jew is no problem here. How does it feel to be a woman minister? I don't know. I've never been a man minister. Being 70 is not a sin. It's not a joy either. Can we today measure devotion to husband and children by our indifference to everything else? There can be no doubt that the average man blames much more than he praises. His instinct is to blame. If he is satisfied, he says nothing. If he is not, he most illogically kicks up a row. I don't want to have a bad influence on anybody, but there's no point in my giving up cigarettes now. I won't die young to be successful. A woman has to be much better at her job than a man. The public history of modern art is the story of conventional people not knowing what they are dealing with. It's not what you gather, but what you scatter that tells what kind of life you have lived. Fashion is an imposition, a rein on freedom. Don't become cynical. Don't give up hope. Don't believe that everything is judged only by expediency. There is idealism in this world. There is human brotherhood. The deserts of the Middle East are in need of water, not bombers. There's no difference between one's killing and making decisions that will send others to kill. It's exactly the same thing, or even worse. Women's liberation is just a lot of foolishness. Men who have reached and past 45 have a look as if waiting for the secret of the other world, and as if they were perfectly sure of having found out the secret of this. Glorious bouquets and storms of applause are the trimmings which every artist naturally enjoys. It is not a sin to be 70, but it is also no joke. Anybody who believes in something without reservation believes that this thing is right and should be, has the stamina to meet obstacles and overcome them. It is true we have won all our wars, but we have paid for them. If only political leaders would allow themselves to feel as well as to think, the world might be a happier place. Trust yourself. Create the kind of self that you will be happy to live with all your life. Make the most of yourself by fanning the tiny inner sparks of possibility into flames of achievement. Golda Mabovich, born Goldameir, was born into a Ukrainian Jewish family in downtown Kiev in what was then the Russian Empire. 3 May 1898, 8 December 1978. She was the daughter of Blum Nidich, died 1951, and Moshe Mabovich, died 1944, a carpenter. She had two sisters, Shana, born 1889, and Sipk, born 1902, as well as 5 other siblings who died in childhood. Golda Meir was an Israeli politician who served as the 4th Prime Minister of Israel from 1969 to 1974. She was Israel's first and only female head of government and the first in the Middle East. Meir immigrated with her family to the United States in 1906. She graduated from the Milwaukee State Normal School and found work as a teacher. While in Milwaukee, she embraced the labor Zionist movement. In 1921, Meir and her husband immigrated to Mandatory Palestine, settling in Merhavia, later becoming the kibbutz's representative to the Histadrut. In 1934, she was elevated to the executive committee of the trade union. MEIR held several key roles in the Jewish agency during and after World War II. She was a signatory of the Israeli Declaration of Independence in 1948. MEIR was elected to the Knesset in 1949 and served as labor minister until 1956, when she was appointed foreign minister by Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion. She retired from the ministry in 1966 due to ill health. In 1969, MEIR assumed the role of prime minister following the death of Levi Eshkol. Early in her tenure, she made multiple diplomatic visits to Western leaders to promote her vision of peace in the region. A controversial figure in Israel, MEIR has been lionized as a founder of the state and described as the Iron Lady of Israeli politics. Most historians believe MEIR was more successful as Secretary of Labor and Housing than as Premier. MEIR died in 1978 of lymphoma and was buried on Mount Herzl.